Today marks 86 years since the release of All American Comics #1. All American Comics is a comics anthology and the flagship title of comic book publisher All American Publications, one of the forerunners of DC Comics. It ran for 102 issues from 1939 to 1948. Characters created for the title, including Green Lantern, the Atom, the Red Tornado, Dr. Midnight, and Sargon the Sorcerer, later became mainstays in the DC Comics line. Do you know how big the Green Lantern Corps truly is? And we're counting all media, all universes, and including Alan Scott and his variants, one-off Elseworlds, Green Lanterns, alternate universe counterparts that have distinct names and identities? We're talking roughly 7,200 or so different members. That's a whole lot of rings. Did you know DC toyed with the idea that Wonder Woman and Green Lantern would become a couple? This would have come into fruition in the 1970s until a fan wrote in and pitched the same idea. Ironically, they couldn't pursue it without giving the fan credit, so they gave up, and these two lovebirds never became an item. This is Green Lantern Volume 2, Number 1. Released in late May 1960, this comic featured two stories. The Planet of Doomed Men, showcasing Hal Jordan's first meeting with the Guardians of Oa, the creators of the Green Lantern Corps. He tells them his origin story and meeting Abin Sur, the former Green Lantern. The second story, Menace of the Giant Puppet, features Hal Jordan battling Puppet Master, a villain who uses a hypno-ray to control people. Both issues were written by John Broome, with art by Gil Kane. The Hal Jordan Green Lantern first appeared in Showcase number 22 from October of 1959. Back in 1956, DC editor Julius Schwartz achieved great success in reviving the Golden Age Flash for modern audiences. Looking to do the same, he selected Alan Scott, the 1940s Green Lantern. Drawing from his love of science fiction, Schwartz intended to show the new Green Lantern in a more modern light. The character was a success, and it was quickly decided to follow up his 3-issue run in Showcase with a self-titled series. Green Lantern #1 began in July-August 1960 and would continue until number 89 in April-May 1972. DC's Green Lantern 16 hit store shelves and spinner racks in September of 1991, the same month that Bryan Adams had a hit with Everything I Do for You, and the #1 TV show was Roseanne on ABC. This issue tells the continuing story of Mosaic World, located on the planet Oa. Mosaic World is a patchwork of other civilizations in the galaxy, forced to live together when the last remaining guardian on Oa goes mad from loneliness. John Stewart, custodian of Mosaic World, is forced to take drastic measures when distrust turns to violence among the different civilizations. The story concludes in Green Lantern #17. The story is written by Gerard Jones, who had previously worked for National Lampoon and the fan-run Comics Feature. DC was his first role in the comics industry. He would go on to work for Marvel, Dark Horse, Viz Media, and Malibu Comics, among other publishers. Mark Bright was the artist who also did the cover for this issue. Bright is best known for penciling the Marvel Comics Iron Man story Armor Wars. He typically worked on Solo Avengers, G.I. Joe, and Action Comics. Although Bright inked some of his covers, most of his interior comics artwork, including this issue, was created in collaboration with inker Romeo Tengal. Tengal is a Filipino comic artist who has worked primarily as an inker. He became well known in the industry in the 1980s for his work on the new Teen Titans. A self-taught artist, he started doing comic illustrations after graduating high school. Tengal began working for DC and Marvel Comics in 1986. He inked the comic adaptations of such films as Labyrinth, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and Willow. This issue was colored by Anthony Tollin, a prominent colorist and production artist for DC. Albert de Guzman was the letterer. De Guzman studied at the University of Santo Tomas and has a bachelor's degree in fine arts. Andrew Helfer and Kevin Dooley are credited as editors of this issue. Helfer joined DC Comics in 1981. He became editor for the Justice League of America title and oversaw the title's revamp into Justice League International in 1987. Helfer wrote for the Superboy television series from 1988 to 1990. Kevin Dooley, meanwhile, served as an assistant editor to Andy Helfer before taking over many of the titles following Helfer's promotion. Dooley edited the various Green Lantern comic books and Aquaman. Dooley would go on to oversee the Emerald Twilight storyline, which marked a major shift in Green Lantern, specifically Hal Jordan Green Lantern, a long-standing marquee character of DC Comics. He was replaced by a younger character, Kyle Rayner. Beyond Green Lantern, Dooley also oversaw the Aquaman series, wherein Aquaman had his left hand chewed off by a piranha to be replaced by a hook. Executive editor Dick Giordano rounds out the team. DC Comics vice president Irwin Doenfeld hired Giordano as an editor in 1968. By 1971, he was frustrated by what he felt was the lack of editorial opportunities. Giordano then left DC to partner with fellow artist Neil Adams for their Continuity Associate Studios, which serves as an art packager for comic book publishers. But in 1980, DC publisher Jeanette Kahn brought Giordano back to DC as an editor of the Batman titles. Eventually, Giordano was named the company's new managing editor in 1981 and promoted to vice president executive editor in 1983, a position he held until 1993. This issue features two primary races, humans and Sudarians. Sudarians are humanoid, but with scaly pronounced beak and head fin. Tomar-Ray was the first Green Lantern from that world. Years later, Hal Jordan met Tomar too, Tomar-Ray's son. At Hal's invitation, Tomar became the second Xandarian Green Lantern. This four-part series prompted DC to generate a spin-off Green Lantern series called Green Lantern Mosaic, starring Jon Stewart. The series began in June of 1992 and ended in November of 1993, lasting only 18 issues. It was written by Gerard Jones and primarily drawn by Cully Hamner. Crystal-based entity and Green Lantern Chaselron has a small part in this issue. A Green Lantern of Sector 1416, Chaselron first appeared in Green Lantern number 9 in 1961. He's a silicon-based crystalline being with 13 senses from Barrio 3. Chaselron was one of the many lanterns that were apparently killed when a maddened Hal Jordan attacks and destroys Oa. He is later smashed to bits by several Black Lanterns. His remains are then immolated when Kyle Rayner ignites his dislodged internal power battery to deal a suicide attack to the assembled Black Lanterns. Man, this lantern stuff is wild. Also seen, although briefly, is the Green Lantern of Sector 904, Brick. Brick comes from the planet Dryad, and, like her sector partner, is composed entirely of organic rock. Originally recruited by Hal Jordan, Brick was one of the hundreds of veteran Lanterns to return to active service upon the restoration of the Green Lantern Corps. So, whatever happened to Mosaic World on Oa? Well, Jon Stewart was eventually successful in maintaining the peace among the different communities. But when Hal Jordan, possessed by the Parallax entity, destroyed the central power battery, he slew all but one of the Guardians of the Universe, leaving Oa and the Mosaic World a barren wasteland. Later, it was revealed that the Mosaic World was evacuated by a multi-species coalition in anticipation of the battle between the corrupted Parallax and the Guardians. The survivors of the experiments were carried back to their homeworld. Mosaic's abandoned remains were finally destroyed when Oa was obliterated by Kyle Rayner during the battle with Jordan. I'll admit I'm not always a big fan of Mark Bright's work. He tends to leave his panels open and lacking background and atmosphere, but he does open this issue with a bang. There are some questionable skin tone choices in this issue which confused me at first. I thought they were purple aliens. Back to Bright's work, I really dug the Sidarian speeders flying across Oa. It's a great look. There are a lot of exposition boxes in this issue. Not too sure if it was always meant to represent the omnipresent narrator or Jon's own internal thoughts. They seem like both at times. The beings from Barrio 3 are poorly drawn. They are an unforgiving design, I'll admit, but I really hated their look in this issue. In 1991, sales from all comics were in the range of 300 to 350 million, with DC owning a 27% share of all comics and comic revenue. This equated to about $78 to $91 million, or roughly $180 to $210 million today. The 90s comic bubble was growing exceptionally by 1991, and with easy terms from the many competing distributors led to a ballooning number of comic shops, which in turn resulted in enormous orders. Other publishers were also coming onto the scene at this time. Voyager would become Valiant, and Malibu Comics was growing. At this point in time, Marvel and the X-Men were dominating the market, leaving DC a distant second. However, some DC prints were performing relatively well, particularly Robin 2, The Joker's Wild Issue 1, which is one of the top-selling comics of that year. Just 2 years earlier, Warner Communications merged with Time Inc., making DC Comics a subsidiary of Time Warner. Thanks to the 90s boom and several storylines which gained attention from the mainstream media, DC's extended storylines in which Superman was killed, Batman was crippled, and superhero Green Lantern turned into the supervillain Parallax resulted in dramatically increased sales for DC. However, sales were not destined to last as the bubble finally burst in 1993. At the same time, DC's Piranha Press and other imprints like Vertigo and Helix were introduced to allow for specialized marketing of individual product lines. They increased the use of non-traditional contractual arrangements, including the dramatic use of creator-owned projects, leading to a significant increase in critically acclaimed work and the licensing of material from other companies. DC also increased publication of bookstore-friendly formats, including trade paperback collections of individual serial comics, as well as original graphic novels. Additionally, throughout the 90s, DC characters were mainstays on television. The visually striking Batman the Animated Series featured superb writing by Paul Dini and won an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. Live-action Superboy and The Flash were on TV screens in 1991, as well as the animated Swamp Thing. Advertising in this issue ranges from snack foods to video games, sports cars, and other DC imprints like Impact Comics' The Fly. No, not that one. Mars was advertising Three Musketeers with a heavily inspired storyline from Indiana Jones. Three Musketeers Adventures were a series of ads featuring fearless jungle explorers. TSR was promoting Dungeons & Dragons game complete with rulebook, maps, die, and more. There are 2 Nintendo video game ads. The first is Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure. The other was a game based on the Lone Ranger. Fleer was marketing their football cards. This ad featured the cards of Howie Long, Warren Moon, and Dan Marino, among others. Here is something I was not expecting. There's an ad for the Steven Seagal fan club that promises you a membership card, a t-shirt, the official Steven Seagal biography, a worldwide martial arts product line catalog, plus a full color poster, all for $24.95, or about $60 today. I really love the old throwback ads that they still had in comics in the early 90s. There's an Atlas body in 7 days, get your own shrunken heads made by real Amazon Indians, oh my, and whatever this is. I was happy to find an ad for comics and collectibles and learn that they're still alive and kicking in Memphis. If you have the opportunity, please visit them at 4730 Poplar Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee, or visit memphiscomics.com. Thanks for checking out this video. If you want to see more, please hit like and subscribe. If you have suggestions for comics you want me to deep dive into, please leave a comment below. Please help and support real artists. AI is great for a lot of things, but not for creating art and replacing artists. Thank you.
So, who is the most prolific writer in the modern age of comics? The answer is Geoff Johns. His contributions include over 300 Justice titles, 248 Green Lanterns, 172 Flash titles, and dozens more, all totaling over 1,000 issues.
So, who decided on Green Lantern Guy Gardner's whole look? When he was originally created in 1968 by Gil Kane, Guy Gardner was meant not to stand out from the crowd. He was modeled after Martin Milner, a very everyman TV face. Guy was the backup lantern to Hal Jordan's starring role. By the 1980s, writer Stephen Englehart decided to completely revamp Guy, and with the help of artist Joe Stanton, they did just that. Stanton based Guy's redesign on a British TV character known for entitlement and resentment, none other than Danny Wilde from TV shows The Persuaders. Visual design, the hair, posture, and expressions were meant to scream arrogance, insecurity, and aggression. Essentially, Guy's look is intentional anti-hero design. Everything is meant to visually communicate. This guy is abrasive, insecure, and not traditionally heroic. So who gave Guy his distinctive look? That's Englehart and Stanton. Meanwhile, in the comics, Guy's choices are all his own. On this date in 2011, the Green Lantern film starring Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and Peter Sarsgaard was released. The film is loosely based on the Green Lantern Secret Origin run from 2008. In fact, Secret Origin writer Geoff Johns served as a producer and creative consultant on the film, and multiple interviews and retrospective analyses have identified Secret Origin as the movie's primary blueprint. Johns himself stated that the film was built around Hal Jordan's journey into the core, while producer Donald DeLine specifically cited reading the Secret Origin as the key entry point into Hal's story. The Parallax mythology was taken from Green Lantern Rebirth from 2004, while the Sinestro Corps War from 2007 was hinted at during final scenes of the film. The source of the Corps, Oa, the Guardians, the classic mythology are all from the Silver Age Green Lantern stories. The film, meanwhile, was considered a flop, with Reynolds distancing himself from the project multiple times. 10 years ago today, the first issue of Green Lantern Corps, Edge of Oblivion limited series was published, written by Tom Taylor with pencils and inks by Ethan Van Scriver. The story follows from Green Lantern Lost Army, where a small group of lanterns face an emerging threat while stranded far away from the Corps. It blends cosmic adventure, mystery, and high-stakes drama. The series was seen as a good way to spotlight lesser-used Corps members and cosmic storytelling in the DC universe.